3 weeks away, caring for my sick sister should have been just a trip of family duty. But when I opened my front door, what I found wasn't the warmth of my familiar home. It was a stranger smiling, raising a glass in my bedroom. They thought I was too old to reclaim what was mine. They forgot that age doesn't erase memory, nor does it take away the ability for revenge. My name is Evelyn Harper, and at 72, I thought I'd seen enough of life's cruelties to be surprised by nothing. I was wrong. The taxi pulled away from the curb, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my worn suitcase, staring at the house I'd called home for 43 years. The October air in Mapleford carried that familiar crisp bite that always made me think of apple cider and Robert's warm embrace. But something felt different this time. The garden gate creaked as I pushed it open. Had it always sounded so hollow? 3 weeks. That's all I'd been gone. 3 weeks in Oregon, holding my sister Margaret's hand through her chemotherapy sessions, making her laugh with old stories, pretending we weren't both terrified. She'd insisted I come home when her daughter arrived to take over. "You have your own life, Evie," she'd said, squeezing my hand with what little strength she had left. "Daniel needs you." Daniel, my son. The thought of him should have warmed me, but lately, our conversations had grown stilted, rushed. Ever since he'd married Tricia 6 months ago, our Sunday dinners had dwindled to occasional text messages. "Just busy, Mom," he'd say. "You know how it is." I fumbled for my keys, noting the strange cars in the driveway, a sleek BMW I didn't recognize, a red convertible that screamed midlife crisis. The smell hit me first as I opened the door, something sharp and medicinal, like those expensive candles they sell at boutiques I'd never shop in. Sandalwood, eucalyptus, whatever it was. It wasn't home. Laughter drifted from the living room, not Daniel's warm chuckle that reminded me so much of his father, but something shriller, more cutting. I set down my suitcase quietly, my hand trembling slightly as I smoothed my travel-wrinkled cardigan. "Hello?" I called out, stepping into the hallway. The family photos that had lined the walls, Daniel's graduation, our trip to Yellowstone, Robert's last Christmas, were gone. In their place hung abstract art that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas in anger. The laughter stopped. Footsteps approached, and there she was, Tricia, my new daughter-in-law, wearing a silk robe at 4:30 in the afternoon. Her bleached blonde hair was piled high in some elaborate style, and her face had that tight, pulled look that comes from too many procedures. Behind her, 3 women I'd never seen before peered out from the living room, wine glasses in hand. "Oh," Tricia said, her voice dripping with false surprise. "You're back." Not "welcome home, Evelyn," not "how's Margaret," just "oh." "Yes, I live here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where's Daniel?" She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Working late, as usual. Though I can't imagine why you'd need to bother him." She turned to her friends. "Girls, this is Daniel's mother, the one I was telling you about." The way she said it, "the one I was telling you about," made my stomach clench. What had she been saying? One of the women, a redhead with too much lipstick, giggled, "Oh, the one who still thinks it's 1950? They all laughed, and Tricia didn't correct her. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe, blocking my path. "Actually, it's good you're here. We need to talk about the new house rules." "House rules?" I echoed, incredulous. "Well, yes, this is my home now, and things are going to be different, more modern, more vibrant." She gestured to the living room, and I could see past her now. My grandmother's oriental rug was gone. The leather reading chair where Robert used to sit vanished. Everything familiar had been stripped away. "I need to put my things down," I said, moving toward the stairs. "I'm tired from the trip." "Oh, about that." Tricia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I've converted your room into my meditation space. You can't have negative energy disrupting the flow of a sacred room. You understand. But don't worry, the couch pulls out." I stood there, my hand gripping the banister, unable to process what I was hearing. Behind Tricia, Her friends whispered and smirked, sipping their wine like vultures at a feast. "This is my house," and I said quietly, though my voice shook. "Robert left it to Daniel," Tricia interrupted. "And what's Daniel's is mine. Welcome to the 21st century. Evelyn, wives aren't just silent partners anymore." She stepped closer, and I could smell the wine on her breath. This house needed a real woman's touch, someone who knows how to live, not just exist. "You're just, what did you call it, Brenda?" The redhead piped up again. "A relic!" "That's it." Tricia snapped her fingers. "A relic, and relics belong in storage, not in the middle of my showcase home." She swept back into the living room, her robe billowing behind her. "Oh, and Evelyn? We eat at 7 sharp now. Keto only. I've thrown out all that processed garbage you had in the fridge. You're welcome." I stood alone in the hallway that no longer felt like mine, staring at the blank walls where my memories used to hang. The sound of their laughter resumed, louder now, crueler. My legs felt weak, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me stumble. The couch. After 43 years, I was being relegated to the couch in my own home. I thought of Robert, of how he'd carried me over this threshold as a bride, whispering promises in my ear. "This will always be your castle, Evie, always." But castles can be conquered, can't they? And as I stood there, listening to strangers celebrate in rooms that held my entire life, I realized I was no longer the queen of this domain. I was the old woman on the couch, in the way of progress, in the way of Tricia's new world order. They thought I'd simply accept it. They thought I was too old, too tired, too broken to fight back. They had no idea how wrong they were. The shock hadn't fully set in until I tried to walk through what used to be my home. Each step felt like trespassing. Even though my name was still on every property tax bill that arrived, I moved through the living room like a ghost, invisible to Tricia's wine-drunk friends who lounged on furniture I didn't recognize. White leather and chrome, cold and unwelcoming as a hospital waiting room. "Excuse me," I said, reaching for the remote control that sat on the coffee table. "I just wanted to check the news, to feel some connection to normalcy." A woman with severe bangs snatched it away. Tricia said no TV before 8. We're manifesting positive energy. She waved her wine glass in a circle, nearly splashing Merlot on the pristine white sofa. I wanted to tell her that I'd been watching the 6 o'clock news in this room since before she was born. But what was the point? They looked through me like I was already a ghost haunting my own life. The kitchen was worse. Every cabinet had been reorganized, labeled with a complex system I couldn't decipher. "Tricia's supplements do not touch," read one. "Organic only," said another. The refrigerator, once stocked with the ingredients for Daniel's favorite pot roast, now looked like a health food store had exploded inside it. Kombucha, kale, something called activated charcoal water. A sticky note on the fridge door caught my eye. "Evelyn, do not eat anything without permission. Food is portioned for meal prep." My hands shook as I opened what used to be my spice cabinet, Robert's mother's recipe box, passed down through 3 generations, was gone. In its place sat rows of identical glass containers filled with seeds and powders I couldn't identify. Looking for something? I turned to find Tricia in the doorway, arms crossed, still in that ridiculous robe. "My recipe box," I said, "the wooden one with the brass corners. It was my mother-in-law's." "Oh, that old thing? I donated it. So musty. Besides, who uses recipe cards anymore? Everything's digital now." She pulled out her phone, waving it like a magic wand. "I've got 17,000 followers on my lifestyle blog. They come from modern cuisine, not grandma's casseroles." "You had no right." "I had every right. This is my kitchen now." She stepped closer, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. "Look, Evelyn, I'm trying to be nice here. Daniel agrees it's time for a change. He's tired of living in a museum." "Daniel said that?" The words came out smaller than I intended. "Why do you think he's working late so much? He's embarrassed. His colleagues come over and see doilies and dust. It's affecting his career." That was a lie. It had to be. Daniel loved this house. He'd carved his initials in the basement door frame when he was 7. He'd had his first kiss on the front porch swing. This house was in his blood as much as mine. I pushed past her and headed upstairs, needing to see my bedroom, needing proof that some part of my life remained intact. The hallway felt wrong, the family photos replaced by generic prints of beaches and motivational quotes in cursive fonts. Live, laugh, love mocked me from where Daniel's baby picture used to hang. My bedroom door was closed. A sign hung from the handle. Meditation in progress. Do not disturb. I turned the handle anyway. The scent hit me first. Incense so thick it made my eyes water. My beautiful 4-poster bed, the one Robert had surprised me with for our 20th anniversary, was gone. In its place sat a low platform covered in pillows. The walls, once soft yellow like morning sunshine, were now stark white. Crystals hung from the ceiling, catching light from candles that violated every fire safety rule I'd taught Daniel as a child. But it was the corner that broke me. Robert's reading chair, where he'd spent his last good months before the cancer took him, where I'd read to him when his eyes grew too weak, gone. In its place stood some kind of altar with Buddha statues and more crystals. "You can't just erase us," I whispered. "I'm not erasing anyone," Tricia said from behind me. "I'm evolving the space. Your husband's been dead for 5 years. Evelyn, it's time to move on." "Get out!" The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd forgotten existed. "Excuse me." "Get out of my room." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Your room? Oh, honey, nothing in this house is yours anymore. Daniel signed the papers. We're putting you on the deed as a dependent resident, tax purposes. You understand, but make no mistake, you live here at our discretion." She pulled out her phone again, scrolling with one manicured finger. "I've already set up your boundaries. Bathroom privileges from 6 to 7 a.m. No guests without approval. Quiet hours after 9 p.m. Oh, and you'll need to contribute to utilities if you're going to keep living here. Fair's fair. I paid off this mortgage. I raised my son in this house. I buried my husband from this house." Each word felt like glass in my throat. And now it's time for the next chapter. My chapter. She moved to the altar, straightening a crystal. "The meditation group meets here Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. You'll need to be out of the house then. Your energy is very disruptive to our practice." I looked around the room that held no trace of my life. My marriage, my memories, even the closet had been emptied. My clothes presumably boxed away somewhere, if not thrown out entirely. 43 years reduced to nothing. "Where are my things?" "The garage," she said, examining her nails. "Most of it. Anyway, I had to make some executive decisions. That furniture was so dated. But don't worry, I kept anything that looked valuable. I'm not heartless." She swept out of the room, pausing at the door. "Oh, and Evelyn? The Wi-Fi password has changed. If you want access, you'll need to ask nicely and follow the house rules. All of them." The door clicked shut, leaving me alone in this sterile space that used to be my sanctuary. I sank onto the meditation platform, my knees protesting. Somewhere in this house, my son was avoiding me, letting his wife systematically erase every trace of the family that had loved him, shaped him, given him everything. I closed my eyes, trying to picture Robert's face, but even that felt distant in this strange new world. They'd taken my home, my memories, my dignity. They'd relegated me to a pull-out couch like an unwanted guest who'd overstayed her welcome. But as I sat there, surrounded by Tricia's crystals and fake enlightenment, something else stirred besides grief. Something harder, sharper, more dangerous than sorrow. They'd made a terrible mistake. They'd left me with nothing to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is capable of anything. The pull-out couch was a medieval torture device disguised as furniture. Every spring dug into my spine, and the thin mattress offered no relief from the metal bar that ran across the middle. I'd been relegated to the den, Robert's old office, which Tricia had graciously allowed me to occupy since it was too small for anything useful anyway. By the third night, I'd given up on sleep. I sat in the darkness, listening to the house breathe around me, so different now from its familiar rhythms. No more creaking of the third stair that Robert never got around to fixing. No more humming of the old refrigerator we'd bought when Daniel was born. Everything was silent, efficient, cold. At 2:15 a.m., I heard small footsteps in the hallway. The door cracked open, and a tiny face peered in. "Grandma? Lily?" I sat up, my back protesting. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" My 10-year-old granddaughter slipped inside, closing the door carefully behind her. In the moonlight from the window, I could see she was wearing her mother's silk pajamas, far too big for her small frame. Mom said I could sleep over. Dad's at another conference. She padded over to the couch, her face scrunched with concern. "Why are you sleeping in here? Where's your big bed?" "It's being cleaned," I lied, not wanting to burden her with adult cruelties. Lily wasn't fooled. Even at 10, she had her father's intelligence and, thankfully, her grandmother's intuition. She climbed onto the couch beside me, careful not to disturb the precarious balance of the pull-out mechanism. "Mom threw away your things," she whispered. "I saw her. She had those men come with a truck." My heart clenched. "What things, sweetheart?" "Lots of stuff from the garage, boxes and furniture." She was laughing on the phone, saying something about finally decluttering the old baggage. Lily reached into her pajama pocket. "But I saved this." She pulled out a small square of fabric, worn soft with age. I recognized it immediately, a piece of the quilt Robert's mother had made for our wedding, the last remnant of a blanket that had covered our bed for decades, that had warmed Daniel through childhood fevers, that I'd wrapped around Robert's shoulders during his final days. "I cut it from the big blanket before Mom threw it in the garbage," Lily said, pressing it into my hands. "I remembered you always touching it when you told me stories about Grandpa." I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, the only sweet thing left in this sterile house. "Thank you, my darling. This means more than you know." "Why is Mom being so mean to you?" The question came out small, confused. How could I explain adult cruelty to a child? How could I tell her that some people saw kindness as weakness, that they mistook quiet grace for surrender? "Sometimes people forget what's important," I said carefully, "but that's okay. We remember, don't we?" Lily nodded against my shoulder. "I remember everything, like how you make hot chocolate with real chocolate, not powder, and how you know all the best stories, and how you never yell, even when I broke your special vase." "You remember all that?" "I remember lots more, too, like where Grandpa hid things." I pulled back to look at her. "What do you mean?" She smiled, that mischievous grin that was pure Daniel at that age. He showed me his secret spots, said someone in the family should know, in case something happened. He said you knew about them, too, but might forget when you got sad. Robert, even gone. He was still looking after me. "Mom doesn't know," Lily continued. "She never asked about Grandpa. She just asked about money and the house papers." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. 2 generations united against an interloper who thought she could erase our history with white paint and crystals. "Grandma, are you going to let her win?" The question surprised me. "What makes you think this is a competition?" Lily gave me a look far too knowing for her years. "Everything's a competition with Mom. She told her friends she finally got the old bat out of the master bedroom. That's you, right? You're not a bat, though bats are cool. You're more like a fox, smart and pretty and good at hiding." Out of the mouths of babes, "You should sleep, sweetheart. Won't your mother wonder where you are?" "She took 2 of her special pills tonight. She won't wake up until noon." Lily snuggled closer. "Can I stay here with you? The couch is lumpy, but it's better than my room. Mom redecorated that, too. Everything's pink and gold like a tacky castle." I held my granddaughter close, feeling something shift inside me. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I'd forgotten what remained. Lily was here. Lily remembered. Lily saw through her mother's facade with the clarity of childhood. "Grandma." Her voice was getting sleepy. "I know where Grandpa kept his important things. The really important ones. Do you want me to show you tomorrow?" "That would be lovely, dear." "Good, because I think he left something for you. Something Mom doesn't know about." She yawned. "He told me you'd need it someday." When the dragon came. Dragon? Robert had always called difficult people dragons in his bedtime stories to Lily. Had he seen this coming? Had he known our son would bring home someone who would try to steal our castle? As Lily's breathing deepened into sleep, I stared at the ceiling, clutching the scrap of quilt. They'd taken my bedroom, my kitchen, my dignity. They'd tried to exile me to the margins of my own life. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd left me with an ally, a 10-year-old ally who knew where the weapons were hidden. I smiled in the darkness for the first time in days. Trisha thought she'd won by banishing the old queen to the dungeon. She didn't realize that sometimes. The most powerful moves were made from the shadows. And tomorrow, with my granddaughter as my guide, I would begin to remember what Robert had left behind, not just possessions or papers, but something far more dangerous to a usurper's reign. Hope, and hope, in the hands of a woman with nothing left to lose, was the most powerful weapon of all. The next morning, Trisha slept until 11:45, just as Lily had predicted. My granddaughter and I had already been up for hours, moving through the house like conspirators. She'd insisted we wait until her mother took her morning pills. She always takes 2 white ones with her green juice, then goes back to bed, before beginning our treasure hunt. "This way, Grandma," Lily whispered. Even though we were alone, she led me to the basement, past Trisha's new exercise equipment that had replaced Robert's workshop. The smell of sawdust was long gone, replaced by rubber mats and industrial air freshener. In the corner, behind a rack of designer yoga mats, stood Robert's old workbench, the one thing Trisha hadn't thrown out, probably because it was too heavy to move. Lily crawled underneath it, her small hands searching along the wooden supports. "Grandpa said you'd remember the lamp," she said, emerging with cobwebs in her hair. "The one he made for your anniversary." The lamp! How could I have forgotten? Robert had spent months crafting it in secret, a beautiful mission-style reading lamp for my bedside table. After he died, I couldn't bear to look at it, so I'd stored it down here. "It's behind those boxes," I said, pointing to a stack of Trisha's shopping purchases, still unopened, together. We moved them aside, revealing the lamp wrapped in an old blanket. It was heavier than I remembered. As I lifted it, something shifted inside the base. Lily watched with bright eyes as I examined it closely. There, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look, was a seam in the wood. "He was so clever," I murmured. Finding the hidden latch, the base opened to reveal a hollow compartment. Inside lay 3 things: a manila envelope, a small recorder, and a letter in Robert's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. "My dearest Evie," it began. "If you're reading this, then I was right to worry. Call it intuition or just knowing our son too well. But I've watched Daniel grow more concerned with status than substance. I pray I'm wrong. But if someone has tried to push you from our home, you'll find what you need here." "What does it say, Grandma?" Lily asked, pressing close. I continued reading aloud. The envelope contains copies of documents that Daniel doesn't know exist. The recorder has my insurance policy, a conversation that might interest certain parties. Our family lawyer, Margaret Hill, has the originals. She's waiting for your call. All my love, Robert P. Remember, the fox often outsmarts the hound by patience, not speed. The recorder was small, digital. I pressed play, and Robert's voice filled the basement, still strong despite the cancer that would soon claim him. "This is Robert Harper, being of sound mind on March 15th, 2020. I'm recording this in the presence of my attorney, Margaret Hill, to clarify the terms of the family trust regarding our home at 47 Maple Street, Mapleford." I stopped the recording, my heart pounding. Lily bounced on her toes with excitement. "Is that good? Will it help?" I think so. Sweetheart, I think Grandpa left us a map. The envelope was thick with papers. I glimpsed legal headers, notarized stamps, Robert's signature alongside mine. But this wasn't the place to examine them thoroughly. We should put everything back, I said, carefully closing the lamp base. This stays our secret for now. Like spies? Lily's eyes sparkled. Exactly like spies. We'd just finished replacing the boxes when footsteps thundered overhead. Trisha's voice, sharp and demanding, echoed through the floor. "Lily, where are you? We have brunch at the club." "Coming, Mom," Lily called back, then whispered to me. She hates when I'm late. It makes her look bad in front of her friends. She hugged me quickly. "Don't worry, Grandma, I won't tell." As she scampered upstairs, I remained in the basement processing what I'd found. Robert had anticipated this. He'd known our son might choose a spouse who saw our family home as an asset rather than a sanctuary, and he'd prepared accordingly. I thought about the lamp, how Robert had presented it to me 30 years ago, his eyes shining with pride. Every piece of wood tells a story. He'd said, "This one will keep our secrets safe." Even then, he'd been thinking ahead, crafting not just a gift, but a safeguard. Later that afternoon, while Trisha was at her club flaunting my former life, I sat in the den with the business card I'd hidden in my wallet, Margaret Hill, attorney at law. She'd been Robert's lawyer for 20 years, had helped us set up our will, had held my hand at the funeral. The phone felt heavy as I dialed. Hill Law Offices. "Margaret, it's Evelyn Harper." A pause. Then, warmly, "Evelyn, I've been expecting your call. In fact, I was starting to worry when I didn't hear from you. How long has it been since Daniel moved her in?" She knew. Of course she knew. Robert would have made sure of that. "6 months since the wedding, but I've only been back 3 days. I was caring for my sister." "And you found Robert's insurance policy?" "Yes, Lily helped me." Margaret's voice softened. "That granddaughter of yours is a treasure. Robert was so proud of her, said she had your spirit and his stubbornness." "Margaret, what exactly did Robert do?" "What he always did, protected his family. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring what you found. And Evelyn, don't mention this to Daniel yet. Based on what Robert told me, I suspect he doesn't know about the trust's special provisions." "What provisions?" "The kind that activate when someone tries to force the primary beneficiary from their home through hostile action." Robert called it his Dragon Slayer clause. I almost laughed. Even from beyond, Robert was still telling stories about dragons and the heroes who defeated them. "What time tomorrow?" 10 a.m. And Evelyn, park in the back. If Trisha's as controlling as Robert feared, she might be watching your movements. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk, clutching the piece of quilt Lily had saved. Upstairs, in what used to be my bedroom, crystals caught the last rays of sunlight. Somewhere in this house that no longer felt like mine, evidence of my life lay boxed in the garage or had already been carted to the dump. But in a lamp crafted with love and foresight, my husband had left me more than memories. He'd left me weapons, and tomorrow I would learn how to use them. The dragon had taken my castle, worn my crown, claimed my throne, but dragons, as Robert always said in his stories, had one fatal flaw. They never expected the fox to have a plan. Margaret Hill's office hadn't changed in 20 years. The same leather chairs, the same diplomas on the walls, the same photo of her and Robert at a bar association dinner, both of them laughing at some long-forgotten joke. She rose from behind her desk when I entered, embracing me like the old friend she was. "You look tired, Evelyn." "Sleeping on a pull-out couch will do that," I said, settling into the chair across from her. Her jaw tightened. "It's worse than Robert feared." Then I spread the documents on her desk, the papers from the lamp, the recorder, everything I'd found. Margaret put on her reading glasses, examining each page with the thoroughness that had made her Robert's most trusted advisor. "Your husband was a brilliant man," she said finally. "He amended the trust 2 years ago, after Daniel started dating Trisha. added very specific language about what constitutes hostile displacement of the primary beneficiary. Which means if you can prove you've been forced from your bedroom, denied access to common areas, subjected to rules and restrictions that impair your quality of life, or otherwise harassed in your own home, the trust's ownership provisions change dramatically. She pulled out a thick folder from her filing cabinet. Here's the original trust. Daniel is the successor trustee, but, and this is crucial, only if he maintains the home as a family residence that provides dignity and comfort to all beneficiaries. You, Evelyn, are the lifetime primary beneficiary with rights that supersede his. But Daniel told Tricia the house was his. Daniel told her what he wanted to believe. He never read the full trust document. Came in here 5 years ago after Robert died. Asked where he signed to transfer the deed. Got frustrated when I told him it was more complex than that. Margaret leaned forward. He has management rights, yes, but not ownership, not while you're alive, and certainly not if he's violating the trust's core provisions. My hands were shaking. So what can we do? First, we document everything. I need photos of where you're sleeping, copies of any written rules Tricia has imposed, witness statements if possible. The recorder is gold. Robert explicitly states his intentions to protect you from exactly this scenario. Lily could testify about what she's seen. Margaret shook her head. I'd rather not put a child through that unless absolutely necessary. But neighbors? Other family members? Anyone who's witnessed how you're being treated? I thought of Mrs. Patterson next door, who'd looked horrified when she saw me carrying my pillows to the den. Of Robert's brother, Tom, who'd been turned away at the door last week when he came to check on me. Tricia had told him I was indisposed. Yes, I think so. Good. Now, here's the delicate part. Margaret folded her hands. We could go straight to court, but that's nuclear option. It would destroy your relationship with Daniel permanently. Robert hoped it wouldn't come to that. He wanted me to try mediation first, a formal meeting where we lay out the trust provisions and give them a chance to comply. And if they refuse, then we exercise the enforcement clause. The trust has teeth. Evelyn, if Daniel is found in violation, he loses all rights as successor trustee. The house would transfer entirely to you, with the power to designate your own successor, even sell it if you wanted, though Robert hoped you wouldn't. Sell the house where I'd raised my son, loved my husband, built my life? Never, but having the power to threaten it. There's more, Margaret continued. Robert set aside a fund specifically for this situation, legal fees, temporary housing if needed, whatever it takes to protect your rights. He called it the Dragon Slayer Fund in his private notes. I laughed despite everything. He always did love his metaphors. He loved you more. Every meeting we had, every revision to the trust, it all came back to protecting you. He said you'd spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. He wanted to make sure someone was looking out for you when he couldn't. Tears burned my eyes, even gone. Robert was still my champion. So what's our next move? You go home and act normal. Don't let on that you know about any of this. I'll send a formal letter requesting a meeting with Daniel and Tricia to review the trust provisions. Make it sound routine. Meanwhile, you gather evidence. Take photos when they're out. Save any texts or emails about house rules. If Tricia posts anything on that lifestyle blog of hers about modernizing the house or dealing with outdated elements, screenshot it. She called me a relic on her Instagram story. I remembered one of her friends showed me, thinking it was funny. Margaret's smile was sharp. Perfect. Get me that screenshot. Social media hubris has destroyed more cases than you'd imagine. She handed me a small notebook. Document everything, times, dates, exact words if you can remember them. Robert said you had an excellent memory for details. When someone is systematically erasing your life, you tend to remember every moment of it. Good, use that anger. Channel it into precision. She stood, walking me to the door. Oh, and Evelyn, this might get ugly. Tricia strikes me as someone who doesn't lose gracefully. Are you prepared for that? I thought of sleeping on that torture device of a couch, of my bedroom transformed into a shrine to Trisha's fake spirituality, of my husband's chair discarded like garbage. Margaret, they threw away my wedding quilt, the one Robert's mother made. Lily had to rescue a piece from the trash. Her face hardened. Then they've already made it ugly. We're just returning the favor. With interest. As I drove home, parking 3 blocks away and walking, as Margaret suggested, to avoid suspicion, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days, hope. Not just the vague wish that things might improve, but concrete, actionable hope, backed by legal documents and a lawyer who'd known Robert's mind. I thought of him crafting that lamp, building a secret compartment while pretending it was just another project. Had he sat in his workshop, imagining this moment? Had he pictured me finding his hidden insurance policy, discovering that he'd protected me even from beyond the grave? Thank you, my love. I whispered to the empty car. Thank you for knowing I'd need armor for this battle. Tomorrow, I would begin gathering evidence. I would document every slight, every rule, every attempt to push me to the margins of my own life. I would be the fox Robert always said I was, patient, clever, watching for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, when we sat across a conference table with the truth laid bare between us, Trisha would learn what Robert had always known. The quietest creatures were often the most dangerous when cornered. The game was no longer about endurance. It was about strategy, and I had the best strategist in my corner, even if he was directing the battle from beyond. The dragon had made her move. Now it was time for the fox to show her teeth. The next week passed in a strange dance of deception. I played the role of the defeated old woman, shuffling around the edges of my own home while secretly documenting every humiliation. My phone, which Trisha assumed I barely knew how to use, became my most powerful weapon. Tuesday, 10:05 a.m., Evelyn, do not enter, meditation in progress. I photographed the sign on my former bedroom door, then recorded the laughter coming from inside, Trisha and her friends, drinking mimosas while supposedly finding their inner peace. Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. A new schedule appeared on the refrigerator. Bathroom. Evelyn may use master bath from 6 to 7 a.m. Only guest bathroom all other times. Click. Another photo. Thursday, 7:20 p.m. That smell has got to go, Trisha announced at dinner, wrinkling her nose as I served myself a small portion of the casserole I'd made for myself, since I was banned from their meal-prepped food. Old people smell. It's in the den now. We'll need to fumigate when she finally moves to assisted living. Daniel sat silent, pushing organic quinoa around his plate. When had my son become this stranger who wouldn't meet my eyes? I'm sitting right here, I said quietly. Yes, that's the problem, Trisha replied, not looking up from her phone. She was live streaming her dinner, angling the camera to catch her designer plates while carefully keeping me out of frame. Authentic family dinner vibes, she cooed to her followers. So blessed to be building our dream life. Friday brought an unexpected ally, Mrs. Patterson caught me taking out the garbage. Another new rule, I had to use the bins on the curb, not the ones by the kitchen door. Evelyn Harper, what in heaven's name is going on? She looked at my armload of trash bags with horror. Why are you hauling garbage like a pack mule? New house rules, I said, trying to sound casual. New house. She stopped, her face reddening. That woman has you taking trash to the curb? At your age? In your own home? It's fine, Dorothy. It most certainly is not. She grabbed 2 bags from me, marching alongside to the bins. I've watched that creature prance around like she owns the place, parking in your spot, changing the garden, throwing away your roses to plant those awful succulents. And now this? She says roses are outdated. Succulents are drought-friendly. Drought-friendly, my left foot. Your Robert planted those roses for your anniversary. I remember because he borrowed my fertilizer. Dorothy's voice dropped. Is it true she's making you sleep in the den? I nodded, too tired to lie. Right, that's it. I'm calling Tom. Robert's brother? Why? Because someone needs to know what's happening here. That boy of yours should be ashamed, letting his wife treat you like this." She patted my arm. "You document everything, you hear me? Everything." If only she knew. Saturday afternoon, I hit gold. Trisha had invited her lifestyle guru over, a skeletal woman named Marissa, who apparently helped people optimize their living spaces for maximum potential. I served them tea in the guest china. Naturally, I wasn't allowed to touch the good sets anymore, and then retreated to dust the living room, staying within earshot. "The energy here is so much better," Marissa gushed. "When you first called me, I could feel the stagnation through the phone. All that old furniture, those dusty memories houses need to breathe to evolve." "Exactly!" Trisha's voice was animated. It was like living in a funeral home. Daniel's mother had turned it into this shrine to the past, but look at it now, fresh, modern, alive. "And you've dealt with the primary obstacle?" "Oh, the mother-in-law?" Trisha laughed. "She's handled. We've relegated her to the smallest room, set strict boundaries. She'll either fall in line or move out. Daniel's already researching senior communities. There's a nice one 40 minutes away, far enough that visits would be occasional." I gripped my dusting cloth, recording every word on my phone. "Smart," Marissa agreed. "You can't build your future with someone else's past cluttering the space. And legally, Daniel inherits everything. She's just a tenant now. Basically, a tenant we don't have to evict because technically she has lifetime rights or something, but life can be made uncomfortable." Brilliant, passive-aggressive renovation. I love it. Have you documented the transformation? This would make an incredible blog series. From funeral home to dream home, how I reclaimed my space. Already started. I've got before pictures. God, you should see how dark and depressing it was. All these heavy drapes and old person furniture. And the smell? Trisha shuddered dramatically. Mothballs and decay. But look at my Instagram. 10,000 likes on the bedroom reveal alone. I slipped away, my hands shaking with rage. Not at the insults, I'd grown used to those, but at the calculated cruelty of it all. This wasn't just about modernizing a house. This was about erasing a family's history, about pushing out the inconvenient reminder that Daniel had existed before Trisha, had been loved before her, had called another woman the most important in his life. That night, while they were at another of Trisha's networking events, I compiled everything: photos, recordings, screenshots of her social media posts where she documented her renovation journey with captions like, "Out with the old," showing my furniture on the curb, and "Creating space for new energy," with photos of my emptied bedroom. The piece de resistance came from Lily, who snuck me Trisha's laptop password. She uses the same one for everything. My granddaughter whispered, "Her birthday backwards. She thinks she's so clever." On Trisha's hard drive, I found draft blog posts she hadn't published yet. One was titled, "When Family Becomes Baggage, A Modern Woman's Guide to Setting Boundaries." Another, "Why I Had to Exile My Mother-in-Law to Reclaim My Marriage." I photographed every page, every cruel word about how I was a dusty relic preventing Daniel from achieving his potential, how my presence was poisoning their sacred space, how she was strategically restructuring the home environment to encourage natural transition to senior care. But the most damning evidence came from her email drafts, a message to Daniel, unsent but saved. "Baby, I know it's hard, but your mother has to go. She's holding us back, holding you back. The partners at your firm will never take you seriously when they come over and see her shuffling around like a ghost. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Trust me. In 6 months, she'll be happily settled somewhere else, and we'll have the life we deserve. The house will finally be ours, just like you promised when we got married. Remember? You said once she was gone, we could knock down walls, maybe add a pool. Well, I'm making that happen. Just maybe sooner than nature intended. Love you." I sat back, staring at the screen. There it was, in black and white, premeditated emotional abuse designed to force me from my home. The dragon had documented her own plans to slay the former queen. Margaret was going to have a field day with this. The conference room at Hill and Associates was designed to intimidate, with its polished mahogany table and wall of legal volumes, but I'd sat in this room before, signing papers with Robert, planning our future. Today, I was reclaiming it. Margaret had arranged everything perfectly. She sat to my right, documents spread before her like weapons. To my left sat Tom, Robert's brother, who'd driven down from Portland after Dorothy Patterson's call. Across from us, Daniel fidgeted with his coffee cup while Tricia scrolled through her phone, seemingly unbothered by the formal letter that had summoned them here. "Thank you all for coming," Margaret began, her voice professional but carrying an edge I recognized. "We're here to review the Harper Family Trust provisions, specifically as they relate to the primary residence and the treatment of beneficiaries." "This is ridiculous," Tricia said, not looking up from her screen. "Daniel owns the house. End of story." "Actually," Margaret slid a document across the table, "that's precisely what we need to clarify. Mr. Harper, have you ever read the full trust document?" Daniel glanced at the papers. The basics. Dad left me the house. Your father left you management responsibilities. Your mother, Evelyn Harper, is the lifetime primary beneficiary with specific rights that cannot be violated." "What rights?" Tricia's head snapped up. "She lives there rent-free. What more does she want?" Margaret smiled coldly. "Perhaps we should start with what Mrs. Harper currently has. Evelyn, would you describe your living situation?" I'd practiced this moment, but my voice still shook. "I sleep on a pull-out couch in the den. I'm banned from my bedroom, restricted to using the master bathroom from 6 to 7 a.m. Only, I cannot eat the food in the refrigerator without permission. I cannot have guests. I cannot use the living room during manifestation hours. I cannot—" "Oh, please," Tricia interrupted. "We've made a few house rules. She's being dramatic." "I have photographs," I said quietly, sliding my phone to Margaret, who connected it to the conference room screen. The first image appeared, the sign on my bedroom door, then the bathroom schedule, the refrigerator rules, the photo of my furniture on the curb, one by one. The evidence of my systematic exclusion filled the screen. Daniel's face had gone pale. "Mom, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Tom interjected. "Dorothy Patterson called me 3 days ago. Do you know what your mother was doing? Taking garbage to the curb because your wife banned her from using the kitchen bins. Your 72-year-old mother, hauling trash like hired help." "The bins attract flies," Tricia said defensively. "It's a hygiene issue." Margaret clicked to the next slide. "Speaking of hygiene, let's discuss this Instagram post. Finally fumigated the old lady smell out of the master bedroom. Essential oils are life." That's taken out of context. How about this one?" The screen showed another post. "Day 73 of reclaiming my space. Bye-bye, Grandma's dusty energy." "Those are private posts. Posted publicly to 17,000 followers," Margaret corrected. "Now, shall we move on to the audio recordings?" Tricia's confident facade cracked. "What recordings?" Margaret pressed play. Tricia's voice filled the room. "She's handled. We've relegated her to the smallest room, set strict boundaries. She'll either fall in line or move out." Then another. "Houses need to breathe, to evolve. You can't build your future with someone else's past cluttering the space." Daniel had his head in his hands. "Tricia, what did you do?" "I improved our lives." She turned on him. "You complained about her constantly, how she still treated you like a child, how the house felt like a museum, how you wanted something fresh and modern." "I never said to kick her out of her room. I never said to treat her like—" He stopped, unable to finish. Margaret let the silence hang before continuing. "There's more. Email drafts discussing plans to force Mrs. Harper into assisted living, blog posts, thankfully unpublished, detailing strategies for encouraging her to leave, and this particularly damning draft to you, Mr. Harper." She read Tricia's email aloud, each word hanging in the air like an accusation. When she reached the part about sooner than nature intended, even Tricia had the grace to look uncomfortable. Now. Margaret set down the paper. Let's discuss the trust's enforcement provisions. Robert Harper included specific language about hostile displacement. If the lifetime beneficiary, that's you, Evelyn, is subjected to deliberate actions designed to force abandonment of the property, several things happen automatically. She pulled out another document. First, the successor trustee, you, Daniel, immediately loses all management rights. Second, full ownership transfers to the primary beneficiary. Third, any parties responsible for the hostile displacement are barred from the property. You can't do that, Tricia stood up. We've invested thousands in renovations. Renovations that destroyed Mrs. Harper's personal property and living space. Tom said, I saw the roses you ripped out. Robert planted those for their 25th anniversary. This is entrapment, Tricia pointed at me. She planned this, pretended to be some helpless old lady while gathering evidence. I am a 72-year-old woman who was forced to sleep on a pull-out couch in my own home, I said, finding my voice at last. I didn't have to pretend anything. Daniel finally looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I thought you were okay with the changes. You never said anything. When was I supposed to say something? During the 15 minutes I was allowed in the bathroom? While being banned from the kitchen? While watching my entire life be thrown in the garbage? Mrs. Harper has been more than patient, Margaret interjected. She could have initiated legal proceedings immediately. Instead, she's offering you a choice. Option 1. Daniel and Tricia sign a legal agreement acknowledging Evelyn's rights as primary beneficiary. Restore her bedroom immediately. Remove all restrictions, and provide written assurance that no further harassment will occur. And option 2? Tricia's voice was sharp. We execute the enforcement provisions. Daniel loses all rights to the property. Evelyn becomes sole owner. You have 72 hours to vacate. 72 hours? Daniel gasped. The same time frame Tricia gave your mother's furniture before putting it on the curb, Tom observed. The room fell silent. I could see the calculations in Tricia's eyes, the desperate search for an angle, a loophole, a way to maintain control. Daniel, she said finally, don't let them manipulate you. This house is ours, our future, our investment. My son looked between his wife and me, torn between the life he'd built and the one he'd destroyed. For a moment, I saw the boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral, who'd promised to take care of me always. Mom, he said quietly, what do you want? It was the first time in 6 months he'd asked me that question. I want my home back, I said simply. I want to sleep in my bed. I want to cook in my kitchen. I want to tend Robert's roses, if any survived. I want to live with dignity in the house where I raised you, where I loved your father, where I thought I'd be welcome until my last day. But mostly, I continued, meeting his eyes, I want my son back, the one who would never have let anyone treat his mother like a burden to be discarded. Daniel's face crumpled. Oh, God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Daniel, Tricia grabbed his arm. Don't you dare fold now. She's manipulating you. He shook her off. No, Tricia, you manipulated me. You convinced me my mother was the problem when the only problem was what we became. He turned to Margaret. We'll sign the agreement, whatever Mom needs. Daniel, if you do this, I'm leaving, Tricia threatened. Then leave, he said quietly, because I'm not losing my mother for someone who could treat her like this. Tricia's face went white, then red. She grabbed her designer bag, fury radiating from every gesture. You'll regret this, both of you. I'll destroy you on social media. Everyone will know what kind of toxic family you are. I think, Margaret said mildly, you'll find that difficult when the evidence shows systematic elder abuse. Social media influence tends to diminish when facing potential criminal charges. The word criminal stopped Tricia cold. Oh yes, Margaret continued, what you've done could be prosecuted. Elder abuse, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud if we dig into those renovation funds, so I suggest you think very carefully about your next moves. Tricia stormed out of the conference room, her heels clicking a furious staccato on the marble floor. Through the glass walls, we watched her fumble with her phone, probably already crafting her victim narrative for Instagram. But Margaret was right. Her influence would crumble the moment our evidence went public. Daniel slumped in his chair, looking older than his 38 years. "Mom, I don't even know where to begin. I let her convince me that you were holding me back, that I needed to evolve past my childhood. I'm so ashamed." "Then start by signing the agreement," Tom said, sliding the papers across the table. "Actions, not words, nephew." As Daniel read through the document, really read it this time, tears rolled down his face. "She's giving up her enforcement rights? After everything we did?" "Your mother insisted," Margaret explained. "Against my advice, I might add, she wants restoration, not revenge." That wasn't entirely true. Watching Tricia flee, knowing she'd lost her carefully curated kingdom, felt like revenge enough. But I wanted my son more than I wanted to punish him. Daniel signed with shaking hands. "When can you move back to your room?" "Tonight," I said firmly. "I'm sleeping in my own bed tonight." The drive home was silent. Daniel followed in his car. Tricia's BMW noticeably absent from our convoy. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw Mrs. Patterson watching from her window. Within minutes, she was at our door with a casserole, and Tom was organizing neighbors to help restore my space. What followed was a reverse demolition. Lily, who'd been at school during the meeting, arrived to find her father carrying Tricia's meditation cushions to the garage. "Is Mom gone?" she asked, and when Daniel nodded, she threw her arms around me. "Good, she was mean to you." "Grandma." "Dad, why didn't you stop her?" "I was weak," Daniel admitted, hefting a box of crystals. "And stupid. And I'm going to spend a long time making up for it." By 9 p.m., my bedroom was mine again. The furniture was different. Tricia had sold my antique set, but Daniel had brought up his father's reading chair from the basement where Tricia had banished it. The walls would need repainting, but the bones of my sanctuary remained. "Mom," Daniel appeared in the doorway, hesitant as a child. "Can I come in?" I patted the bed beside me. He sat carefully, as if afraid I might send him away. "I found something," he said, pulling out a small wooden box. "In Tricia's closet. I think it's Dad's." Inside lay Robert's watch, his wedding ring, and a photo of us on our honeymoon. Items I thought were lost forever. "She said she donated everything," I whispered. "She lied about a lot of things." Daniel's voice broke. "Dad would be so disappointed in me. I gave up everything he taught me for someone who saw our family as an aesthetic to be redesigned." "Your father believed in second chances," I said, taking his hand. "So do I." We sat in comfortable silence, the house settling around us with familiar creaks and sighs. No more essential oil diffusers masking its natural scent. No more crystals attempting to redirect its energy. Just home, breathing freely again. "I'm filing for divorce," Daniel said suddenly. "Not because you won, because I finally see who I became with her. She didn't just try to erase you. Mom, she erased me too. The real me. The one Dad raised." "That's your decision to make. But Daniel, next time, maybe date someone who doesn't see your mother as competition." He laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him in months. "I think I'll stay single for a while. Focus on being a better son, a better father. Lily needs to know she comes from better stock than what she's seen lately." Over the next days, Tricia sent increasingly frantic texts, alternating between threats and pleas. Daniel blocked her number. Her social media meltdown was spectacular but brief. Margaret had been right about evidence of elder abuse being influence poison. Her followers abandoned ship quickly when the truth emerged. A week later, I woke in my own bed to find sunlight streaming through windows no longer covered by blackout curtains. Downstairs, Daniel was making breakfast, badly but with enthusiasm. Lily sat at the kitchen table, working on homework. "Morning, Grandma," she chirped. "Dad's making pancakes. They're terrible, but don't tell him." "I can hear you," Daniel called from the stove. "And they're not terrible. They're rustic. I settled at the table, in my chair, in my kitchen, in my home. The walls still showed pale rectangles where my photos had hung, but Tom had promised to help restore them this weekend. Mrs. Patterson had donated rose bushes from her garden to replace the ones Tricia had destroyed. Life was slowly, carefully, returning to normal. "Grandma," Lily said thoughtfully, "Mom texted me. She wants me to visit her at her new apartment." "That's between you and your father, sweetheart." "I know, but I wanted to ask, do you think people can change? Like, really change?" I thought about the question, about Daniel working to rebuild trust, about Tricia facing the consequences of her actions, about myself finding strength I'd forgotten I possessed. "I think people can choose to change," I said finally, "but they have to want it for themselves, not because they've lost something." "Like Dad?" "Like your dad." Daniel brought over a plate of lopsided pancakes, grinning sheepishly. "They're better with syrup. Lots of syrup." As we ate breakfast together, properly, at the table, like a family, I felt Robert's presence in the room, not in crystals or meditation spaces, but in the simple act of sharing a meal in the home he'd protected even from beyond. The dragon had been slain, not with swords or fire, but with patience and planning and the foresight of a man who'd loved his family enough to shield them from future threats. The castle had been reclaimed, its rightful queen restored. And the fox, well, she'd learned that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in the battle itself, but in the quiet victory of sleeping peacefully in your own bed, surrounded by those who finally remember what home really means. I stood in my bedroom that night, my hand resting on Robert's lamp, no longer hiding secrets, just casting warm light across familiar spaces. The house breathed around me, free of artificial scents and forced energy, simply being what it had always been, our home. "They thought I'd disappeared," I said to the empty room, to Robert's memory, to myself, "but I'm still here." I walked to the door, pausing to look back at my reclaimed sanctuary. Tomorrow, there would be more restoration, more healing, more work to rebuild what had been broken. But tonight, I would sleep deeply in my own bed, in my own room, in my own home. I reached for the light switch, smiling at the thought of Tricia in her stark apartment, surrounded by her crystals and schemes, while I remained exactly where I belonged. "And this time," I whispered as darkness settled comfortably around me, "I'm the one closing the door." The click of the latch was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in months. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this tale, and I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with difficult family situations? How did you handle them? Let's discuss in the comments. Your support means everything, and sharing your own experiences helps us all feel less alone.